So Shalom, another daily meditations for our minds today, because we need to be always reminded of what we need to be watered, right? And that is the word, right? Because every day it's always about the flesh. We get tired, we get fleshly. That's why we need to be showered by the word, right? To be showered by the word is to be reminded of something, and to be reminded of something is to get watered by the word. And what is the word for today? The word for today is to speak your mind, right? Because in this walk, there is a law that says that you must not hate your brother in thine heart, right? Now, how can you stop that, right? By speaking your mind, right? Because you can't hate your brother in thine heart. You have to speak what needs to be spoken, right? And that's what we need to improve daily, right? How can we improve daily? By doing it consistently, right? Because when you use something daily, it becomes useful, and when it becomes useful, you use it more often, and when you oftenly use it, it becomes sharp, and when it becomes sharp, it becomes more um, straight to the point, right? And that's the importance of speaking your mind, right? That's why the law of um, not hating your brother in thine heart is to speak your mind, right? Of course, we must speak it constructively. That's why we are doing this daily, right? That we might harness the righteous sword, that we may um, apply the spirit of meekness in that sword, right? What is that sword? That sword is our tongue, right? The power of the life in there is in the power of the tongue. I think that's in Proverbs 18. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 18, and verse 21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. They that love it shall eat the fruit thereof. Therefore, if you love the tongue of giving life, you will eat the fruit of that. But if you use your tongue for death or for corruptible reasons, that's the fruit that you will give, right? Now, if we constructively rebuke a brother, right, righteously, we can what? Gain brothers back, right? That's why the verses of Matthew are very, very powerful, right? Because you have to also apply the spirit of meekness. Therefore, once you apply the spirit of meekness, you can then constructively fix a brother, right? It's not about, rebuking heavily, right? The book of Ecclesiasticus says that there is a counsel that is not comely, or an advice that is not comely, right? That's why we have to constructively, that's the most important one, is to constructively um, rebuke them, right? Properly, right? That we may not hate our brother in thine heart, right? So that's what we must do, right? Now, there are cases where it's difficult to deal with a brother, because your brothers or sisters are difficult to deal with because they are not understanding. That's why we need what? Patience, right? Because I'm struggling with this skill, because most of the time brothers and sisters are very, very difficult to deal with. Sometimes when you're trying to speak your mind or being honest to them, they laugh at you, they mock you, so um, rebuking someone or telling them the problem is very, very difficult. But in this walk, we have to be honest, right? Because we have to regain them back, right? So it must be done in a spirit of meekness, patience, and proper construction, right? That's why we have to harness daily and sharpen our sword daily, that we may properly construct them in ways where we have to properly say it, right? Because we must, because Proverbs 18 and 21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof, right? So speak your mind, but constructively and with patience, right? And do it daily so that you may have that sharp sword, right? Because once you have that sharp sword, which is your mouth, right? Your tongue, you can then think critically. Once you're thinking critically, you are getting to the bottom of the problem of that person. Because once you are in the midst of that problem, you can then what? Fix it. Once you fix it, you can then gain your brother back. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 18, and verse 15. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. If he shall hear thee, thou hast gained thy brother. That's why we must always be prepared with the word, right? Because anytime a brother can trespass us, they could lie, they could mock, they could angrily murder us, uh, and we have to be prepared with the word, right? So how can you do that if you are not prepared, right? Remember that failure to prepare is preparing to fail, right? That's why as early as now we must hone, harness, sharpen our mouth, our tongue, our swords, that we may be able to be prepared against the trespasses that will be put against us, right? Remember that in this walk, people will insult you, people will shame on you, right? And we have to be prepared with the words that we need to say, and that requires patience, construction, and critical thinking, right? So we have to be prepared daily and consistently harness it so that in times of trespasses we can fix brothers and gain them on our side. But if he will, verse 16, but if he will not hear thee, then take with thee one or two more, that in the mouth of two or three witnesses every word shall may be established, right? So you also need allies in this walk. And if he shall neglect to hear them, tell it unto the church. But if he neglect to hear the church, let him be unto thee as an heathen man and a publican, right? So we have to harness ourselves. We have to speak our minds, right? And we have to do that daily so that we can be also remind ourselves what we need to be reminded of, because every day we get fleshly. That's why we also have to be daily um, watered by the word, right? And that's how you can endure it as much as you can, right? Add to that, um, the medicines like a friend, right? So when you have that in this walk, you are more capable of enduring it to the end, right? Because we really need those swords, right? It's like going in a war or a spiritual warfare without the swords, right? And shields, right? So we have to harness that daily. We have to harness our patience, right? And proper construction of words by always harnessing them, right? You know how swords are sharp, are formed, right? They get hit, or they what do you call this? They are always getting hit by a hammer that they may get sharpened. This is the same thing. We have to always speak daily that we may toughen up our swords, that in times of trespasses of brothers we are able to combat it properly, accordingly, and with patience, right? And doing it daily helps us with getting those small wins, that we may have confidence, right? And have confidence also is to have faith in the Most High, so that in times of so that in His time He will what? This is the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 51 and 30. Work your work betimes, and in His time He will give you your reward, right? So that's the meditation for today, is to speak your mind, because there's a law that says that you must not hate your brother in thine heart, right? So speak your mind properly, constructively, and with patience. All praises to the Most High Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Tawada, Amen.